Hello everybody, this is Mithril Zenith. Welcome back to another tier list. Today I am tiering the emblems. Now, in order to be fair, I am putting the DLC emblems separately because I do not own the DLC. I have not played with the DLC myself, and I feel it would be unfair of me to rank the DLC emblems because I have not used them myself. I don't have any experience with them, and also because if we're talking about like how available the emblems are, what they enable, what they don't enable, having the DLC emblems where you can get them at basically any time in the game after chapter like 5 or so kind of throws that out the window. I will briefly mention I feel so we also don't even have all the emblems here. We don't have Crom Robin, we don't have Veronica. I feel that in terms of strength, Tiki's by far the strongest of the DLC. Soren and then the Three Houses Lords are pretty strong. I feel like Camilla and Hector are a little bit weaker than them, but I still feel that all of the DLC emblems are still strong choices. I have no idea what the Crom and Robin emblem even does. No one's been talking about it. I haven't been able to find any real information. Granted, I haven't really dug a lot too much. But the Veronica emblem is also very strong, similar power to Tiki, probably less powerful though, because of some of the restrictions, but definitely provides a lot of insight. Anyway, because tier lists have been kind of not necessarily under fire, but they've been getting a little bit of a different sort of look. I am going to explain my process and my rating style for these tier lists, for this tier list, before I get started. So, emblems. All emblems generally are quite good. You only have one emblem each, one copy of each emblem, but you have all emblems, and you, unless you have the DLC, you will always have more unit slots for deployment than you have emblems. So there's rarely a reason to actively not use one of these emblems unless you have a specific strategy that relies on a specific bond ring above one of these emblems. So all of these emblems are useful, all of them can be used, all of them should be used. Let's put that out there first. I will not be talking necessarily about the inheritable skills from the emblem in terms of like just the skill by itself. I will be talking specifically about the emblem when it is equipped. So when you have the emblem equipped, this is what it allows you to do. I may or may not talk about the skills a little bit, but if they do come into play, they are a lower rating, a lower ranking. They're a lower priority of ranking the emblems than the emblem itself. So we're talking about the sync skills, the stat bonuses, the engage skills. So with that out of the way, let's get to it. Let's start with Marth. And I think Marth is a very weird one to start with. Marth gives strength, speed, and luck, I believe. Is it luck or skill? I think it's strength, speed, and dex. You have him early on, and then you don't have him, and then he comes back at the very end of the game, and he's a lot worse at the end of the game than he was at the start. Marth, so availability-wise, he actually has fairly poor availability. Not the worst, but fairly poor. He gives you swords. He gives you the rapier, which early on is actually quite helpful, and then later on is basically meaningless because it's 7 might. He gives you Mercurius, which is very good, but requires bond rank 10. But, I mean, if you put fragments in, you can get that on anyone as soon as you unlock the arena. And he gives you Falchion, which is, all things considered, a pretty mediocre at best weapon, simply due to the fact that regular dragons don't really exist as enemies in this game, for the most part. He gives you break defenses, he gives you when synced, divine speed. Lodestar Rush is a very good, people call it a delete button. It's not a guaranteed delete, but it can do quite a bit. Is a very powerful offensive emblem. A lot of his inheritable skills increase a void, although those skills are not active when Marth is equipped. They're not sync skills. They are just inheritable skills. So Avoid Plus and Sword Avoid are inheritable skills that are not sync skills. So, what does Marth give? He gives offense. He gives sword use, sword availability in the early game when you desperately need more units to wield swords. Otherwise, you only have your main character and Saline who can use swords, and Saling's not really going to be using swords. He's decently powerful. Provides a pretty good power spike, especially when engaged. Provides a lot of experience during the early chapters if you utilize Mercurius well. All in all, not too bad, but there's a lot of stronger things Emblems can do, which is why among Emblems I'm rating him B tier. I think he is amazing for the early game. I think in the late game he's very forgettable. Sigurd is definitely S tier because +5, maybe +6 if you're on a dragon movement. +5, +6, +7, however much movement he gives is insane. That is so much movement. The movement alone gives him that. Override is a little more situational of a skill because it forces you to move, but it's still an emblem attack, so you still have take no counter. It's still a 100% guaranteed hit, and it works really well with heavy lances like a Silver Great Lance, or if you've invested in it, Venomous. Momentum. Override works with momentum as well. Momentum is a pretty good skill. It's only okay when you're using it without Sigurd, but with Sigurd equipped, that can easily add up to +10 damage. There's a lot of strategic moving around enemies in order to get like 4 more points of damage with momentum. His emblem weapons are actually not that great. You have the Rider's Bane, which is again good early on and then kind of falls off because you can't upgrade it. You have a Brave Lance of his, which so momentum only applies to the first hit, and it's pretty low power, and it sounds weird, but I feel like Brave weapons are really weak in Engage unless you have a very specific build focused around them, so you could like get extra skill procs or boosting your damage really huge through some other means. And so I feel like the Brave Lance is kind of the weakest. And then you have Tearfang, which gives 5 resistance and is a sword. It's there. It's not terrible, but it's not super impressive. I'm debating actually putting Sigurd in A tier instead of S tier. And I think I will do that because, yeah, he provides a lot of movement. He provides a lot of utility. But ultimately, it's like it's just the movement that you really love him for. He opens up a lot of strategies because of his high movement. There's a reason that he's really popularly paired with Louis, especially in the early game, because you can easily get Louis to the point where he's unkillable, and then Sigurd allows him to get that extra movement, move behind enemy lines, and snipe out key targets. Override allows you to guaranteed hit units that you really need to kill, like mages or thieves, and also Override allows you to zap an entire line of enemies in a really strong way. I think Sigurd's great. I think he's A tier. I think that when you get him back, also you get him back pretty early on, and so technically he has the best availability of any emblem in the game, tied with Lyn and Lucina in terms of number of chapters available. The chapters that he's not there for, you really miss him. And I'm not even getting into the fact that he gives you Canter, which is insane and great, and I love it. And if I were to tier emblems with their inheritable skills, or in terms of their inheritable skills, Sigurd would definitely be S tier. But I think that if you discount the fact that he gives Canter as an inheritable, then he's only A tier. Celica is weird. I'm going to rank Celica as C tier. She's very good at mobility. She's very good at being like a delete button at range, especially in the early game, especially on lower difficulties. But I find on higher difficulties, a lot of enemies really just kind of survive her attack. And then once they survive, you're kind of apart from your team. You can use Warp Ragnarok in a lot of cool ways, which is why I don't think it's D tier. I think that effectively 10 squares of unhindered movement, regardless of anything, is good. It does suck that she is unavailable during some of the chapters where you would really want Warp Ragnarok the most. But I still think she is quite a solid emblem, quite viable. But when I think about what she actually gives directly, it's okay. Warp Ragnarok is great. The Recover Staff is very good, though Micaiah does, like, staff shenanigans better. I'm debating if the Recover Staff alone is good enough to put her into B tier, but I do think that she's more niche than Marth. Plus the fact that magic emblems in this game just get overshadowed by magic bond rings. Like, you can have Celica and boost your magic damage by a little bit because of her magic buff, and because of, whatever it's called, Resonance. Or you could use Olwyn and double with Thunder, or you could use Lilina and get 20% extra fire damage, or you could use May and get 20% extra Thoron damage. I feel like she gets overshadowed by bond rings too much, and that's why I think she's only C tier, because her only really unique features are the Recover Staff she gives and the Warp Ragnarok. Seraphim is a pretty good ability for fighting Corrupted. That does end up coming into play fairly often, but because of its low might, you're gonna kind of it helps, but it doesn't tend to help quite enough, especially on Maddening. And Ragnarok is it's powerful, but not as powerful as like a Forged Bolganon, and by the time you get Ragnarok, you've basically beaten most of the game, and if you wanted a Forged Bolganon, you can make a Forged Bolganon. You're starting to get S-rank tomes like Nova by that point. Do you really want Ragnarok over like a Lilina Bolganon or Nova? I don't necessarily think you do most of the time, and so I think that, yeah, the only thing keeping her out of D tier is the Recover Staff she gives, her early availability, and Warp Ragnarok. Micaiah is definitely easy A tier, maybe S tier, just because of utility alone. So, Micaiah is very interesting. Micaiah is not a combat emblem. Throw out all semblance of combat viability from your mind. She will not really help you kill that many more things. She gives Shine. She gives... What the heck even is her rank 10 ability? It's like so useless. Nosferatu, I want to say? It's a really weak Nosferatu. And then at level 15 she gives Thani, which can be pretty useful, but again, same problem as like Celica and Marth. You get it so late into the game that there's not a lot that it enables that you couldn't have otherwise. Like, okay, armor effective is nice. You're already probably killing armor if you double with a mage. Cavalry effective is nice. The actual base damage of Thani is not sufficient to really make up the difference. If you're only hitting the cavalry once, you want to hit it twice or have a massive damage boost. Again, like Lilina or Olwyn. Combat-wise, she gets outpaced by them. Utility-wise, though, she gives any unit two big things. One, Great Sacrifice. Her ultimate allows you to heal the entire map, everyone on it, up to full, restore their status. And that's not even saying it gives you experience for everyone you heal, which can very quickly turn into a full level up, especially early on, that you don't have to fight for. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to really set it up. Just have some units be damaged, use Great Sacrifice, get a level up. Not just level up, but a ton of SP as well. Anyone you want to level, anyone you want to invest SP into at all, Micaiah. Micaiah solves that problem. And late game, even if you're not using it for a lot of experience, it is still hugely powerful to be able to have a global mass heal After, like, you take a player phase, you do some risky strats, you take some hits, you might not survive an enemy phase. Great sacrifice, global mass heal. You can hide away the one unit that does it, and then everyone else is perfectly fine. The second one, and probably the more impactful one, is Cleric, being able to give anyone C rank staves, and then increasing that after bond rank higher to B rank and eventually even A rank is huge. Huge for experience gain, huge for staff utility, huge because you don't have to bring a staff unit. Someone commented on my Jean video recently, is like, oh, well, if you're who you're using in the early game as a staff unit then, if not John? Fram? No, you're using whoever you put Micaiah on as your staff unit. Duh. Um, I don't know. It's or before you get Micaiah, you're using one, maybe both of them, because staves are quite useful. They're not always useful, but I find that in maddening they're a lot more important than in like hard. But still, regardless of whether you actually get a ton of use out of them or not, you're getting a lot of experience out of it. You're getting basically staves give you the ability to turn gold into experience over time. Over time with use. And that's also not even including utility staves. Freeze, Illume is pretty good, though you do have regular torches. Obstruct, give anyone an obstruct staff. And when engaged, not only do you get Cleric, but you also get, it's not Staff Mastery, it's whatever the skill is called, where you have AoE staves. So I think I can't remember if you obstruct, if it makes a plus state shape obstruct instead of just single tile, but I know that if you have a targeted staff, you do all allies around it. So you can targeted heal, you can group freeze, group silence, group entrap, or group warp, or group rewarp. The insane amount of options Micaiah gives make her the ultimate utility emblem, barring possibly one other, and we'll get to that one later. Micaiah is definitely S tier. Roy is a pretty good boy. Roy, I think, is only B tier, but I love his ability set. He gives strength. Strength, defense, and dex, I think. Strength, defense, dex, maybe strength, defense, speed. No, strength, hit points. Hit points, strength, and some other third one. I think it's defense, but it could be... Oh yeah, by the way, I don't remember what these others give. Sigurd gives build, for whatever reason. It's like build, strength, and dex. Celica, of course, gives magic, dex, and strength. Micaiah gives magic, luck, and speed, or dex, I want to say. I don't remember. That doesn't necessarily matter too much. Roy's plus strength is huge. Roy gives a lot of plus strength. He has the inheritable skill strength plus, up to plus 6, but inheritable skills are not sync skills. They don't apply. He also has sword power, which is inheritable, which is not a sync skill and doesn't apply. In theory, Roy can give the most strength possible from inheritance, which is for 11,000 SP, you can give sword power and strength plus 6, sword power 5, and strength plus 6, and then you have plus 16 damage on your brave sword that you get from Brodio rank 4. And there you go, you just have plus 16 power per hit, and you quad with a brave sword, and you kill everything on player phase. That's not why we're talking about Roy, because that's all inheritable, that's not sync skill. Roy gives a lot of strength, Roy gives a lot of hit points, those bonuses are meaningful. Roy gives holdout. Holdout means you can't die in combat if the combat started and you're at a certain hit point threshold. It is better than Miracle. It is better than pretty much any other guaranteed survival skill, outside of arguably FE4 Miracle in certain circumstances. Because basically what it means is that you cannot die during that combat. It doesn't just protect you from one hit. It doesn't just protect you against like a chance. It doesn't like limit the you cannot die during that combat. You will remember this very well when you're fighting Marnie. And when Marnie has Roy during chapter 17, and I think at least one other time, you can't kill her in one round. No matter if you're dealing damage with chain attacks instead, no matter if you're, quadding, no matter if you're doubling and doing over per max HP in a single hit, you cannot kill her with holdout. And Roy gives every rank of holdout as you level him up. That's really good. Roy gives advance when equipped, which means that you can basically move one extra tile if you're attacking. That's pretty good. It's situational. It's a lot more situational, but it's still pretty good. Roy gives... what else does he give? He has some pretty useful emblem weapons, actually. The Lance Reaver means that early game, if you have a lot of... if you use on just a guaranteed sword unit, or heck, even a guaranteed axe unit, you have ability to break lances. The Wormslayer is effective against dragons. Again, it's not super impactful, but does have its moments here and there where you fight normal dragons and not fell dragons. And the Binding Blade is a 1/2 range sword with huge defense and resistance buffs and huge base damage. It's real good. The Binding Blade is actually probably one of the best emblem weapons in the game. I would put it maybe like number 5 or something, and that's mostly just because Ike's weapons, and especially Byleth's weapons, are just so good. But the Binding Blade is very strong as an engaged weapon. Roy's Young Lion ability, his ultimate, busting out just a 3x2, or if you're a dragon, 3x3 fire range, is very powerful, is very meaningful, very strong. You do have to have a target, so you can't just lay it down ahead of you like Corrin. But the fire still is impactful, more so for the limiting of movement than for the damage it does itself. But it does allow you to kill 3 enemies and lay down fire to prevent others. I used it to really great effect in Alir's Paralogue, just blocking out the south while my Corrin user was doing something else. That said, and then also when engaged, you get like +5 levels, which are calculated based on fixed stat growths. What stat growths you get. That said, Roy is only really helpful during combat. He's a good combat buff, but he's kind of a basic combat buff. He really helps a unit that just needs a couple extra stats, like a couple extra points of strength and hit points, to be a strong fighter. Someone like Diamant, he's really good on. Someone like Kagetsu, he's really good on. He doesn't really provide a lot of utility. He doesn't allow you to move crazy places. He doesn't really change up the strategies you can do. He just makes whatever unit he's on, a lot better at fighting and a lot better at surviving. And I think that is enough to get him over Celica, because while Celica has extra utility, she's not very impactful for that unit, and you need to still be really careful with Warp Ragnarok, otherwise you're going to get that unit killed. Roy, great survivability, great combat effectiveness. Leaf. Everyone knew it was coming. My boy Leaf got done dirty. Oh, my boy Leaf got done so dirty. So, Leaf gives some inheritable skills that are pretty decent, like Vantage, Build Plus, he has the knife access and all that stuff. That doesn't really matter for this tier list, but figure I need to say it, he does have some value. Leaf is supposed to be all about being a versatile enemy phase emblem, using stuff like Vantage to counter enemies, using adaptability to always be able to counter, to never be at weapon triangle disadvantage, using stuff like Arm's Shield to reduce the damage taken when you have weapon triangle advantage, and then his ultimate is a quad attack, basically guaranteeing a break. I've just said everything good about Leaf. Leaf stat boosts are not very good. For an enemy phase emblem, he does not give you nearly enough survivability. Arm Shield is 3 damage reduction, up to 5. at high level, and that's only if you actually have weapon triangle advantage over your opponent. Adaptability sounds really good, but because the game chooses the weapon for you and the game has some weird algorithm where it prioritizes. Okay, so here's what it does. Here is your masterclass in adaptability. Not even masterclass. Here's your detailed introduction to how adaptability actually works. Adaptability takes list of all your weapons, including your emblem weapons. It then decides, okay, first of all, do you have weapon triangle advantage and can you get weapon triangle advantage? And it'll pick that weapon. Otherwise, it'll say, okay, well, are they attacking at 1 range or 2 range? What range are they attacking and can you counter? If you can, it'll give that weapon. Then it will say, okay, well, if we still can't decide between another weapon, what deals the most damage to the enemy? And it doesn't necessarily pick that out of what has the most might. It says, okay, if we can get a high crit chance, let's prioritize that. Let's prioritize something that could potentially kill the enemy and not just deal damage. So for instance, if you have a Sacred Stones Refine Killer Bow on Fogado with Leaf, and a Forged Silver Bow on Fogado with Leaf, and you are attacked at 2 range, Leaf prioritizes, so long as he can deal some damage, the Killer Bow over the Silver Bow, even though that lowers your crit avoid by 20 and gets you crit and you die. That happened to me at least once, if not multiple times, with Leaf because of adaptability. Also, adaptability only procs when you are engaged, and Quad Strike, it's nice to basically have a near guaranteed break, but it doesn't have any damage buffs on it, and so the unit you're hitting with will more likely than not have at least one of those hits do 0. It is not uncommon to have someone with Leaf... Oh, sorry. Punched the mic. It is not uncommon to have someone with Leaf use Quad Strike and deal 4 zeros, or like 0, 13, 0, 0. Something like that. His emblem weapons don't sound bad. You have the Master Lance, which is a 1-2 range Brave Lance. You have the Killer Axe, which is... It's a Killer Axe. You have the Light Brand, which is an honestly good 1-2 range magic-based sword. Adaptability messes all of that up, and because you can only use those engaged weapons when engaged, those emblem weapons when engaged, you are always at the mercy of adaptability, which will oftentimes switch to the Master Lance because that counters at 2 range. Even though it loses its Brave effect and is much weaker than the Light Brand, it'll oftentimes, everyone's had this happen who's ever tried to use Leaf, it'll switch to the Master Lance on enemy phase just because you take slightly less damage and it gives you weapon triangle advantage or something, and then you don't kill the enemies that you wanted to kill with the Light Brand. Leaf is an emblem that just needed more time in the oven. They just kind of gave him a lot of abilities and said, it'll be good enough, and then it wasn't. That's my Leaf rant. I'm sad that Leaf sucks. I love Leaf. But he's a D tier emblem. He is the worst emblem. Like, I honestly feel like you are better off using a Bond Ring with a helpful ability than using Leaf most of the time. I think Leaf is only really arguably helpful for like Vantage, and even then the most that you're going to get out of Leaf is him being an emblem so you get full SP. Lyn is a great emblem, actually. Let's stop talking about Leaf and talk about Lyn. I'm debating putting Lyn into S tier because what she does is so helpful. When equipped, Lyn gives a lot of speed, a lot of dex, and some luck, I think. If I remember right. I don't think she gives strength or magic. I think it's speed, dex, and luck, which makes sense for Lyn. She gives a lot of speed. You can inherit speed plus from her to get more speed. You can inherit a speed taker to get more speed, but her sync skills are speed taker, which every enemy you kill in a chapter gives you +2 speed up to 10. Alacrity, which if you double, you use both of your attacks before the enemy, as long as you're above a certain speed threshold. she has a repeatable emblem ability in terms of through illusory doubles, which creates 4 or 5 if you're a dragon copies with 1 HP and generally pretty high avoid, which are all wielding the Manikadi, that will backup attack with you or with Lucina if in range for all for one, but won't back up with any other units. These are very good as being distractions. Set them down, canter away, or just set them down and have the enemy attack them because they're like, oh, 1 HP, I can get a kill. And so long as you don't have another even more vulnerable unit in their range, they will tend to kill the doubles before one of your other units. Not always, it's not guaranteed, but it helps a lot. And then her ultimate ability is Astro Storm, which lets you fire off at 10 or 15 or some absurd range with a bow, 5 shots at 30% damage. So it calculates your attack minus their defense, and then takes whatever that result is, times it by 0.3, rounds down, and gives you the final result. So oftentimes you're not going to kill with this unless you have a really strong forged bow. That's why one reason why a lot of people use Lyn with Alchrist. But really good at sniping flyers, really good at sniping mages, and really good at drawing enemies out, because a lot of enemies don't attack until you enter their range or until they are hit. Using Astro Storm, you can do stuff like hit a boss, which most bosses in Engage are mobile. Hit a boss, have them come to you, and then you just kill them, on your terms. You don't have to go all the way there. A lot of people solve the Ike paralog this way, by hitting him turn 1, having him come down, so you don't have to wait until all the mass numbers of Void Curse reinforcements start coming. Why is Lyn S tier? Because obviously what I just explained is good, but is it really broken? Let me put it this way. When equipped, specifically when equipped, Lyn solves the speed issue of pretty much any unit outside of someone who is so slow they will never get the ability to double, like General Louis. And even they can be brought up fast enough to avoid getting doubled and potentially double some units themselves. My IV right now in Maddening is not looped, nothing crazy. I think I maybe gave her 1 speed wing. She has 17 base speed currently in Maddening. I'm going into chapter 18. With Lyn equipped and all the bonuses that I have, it's Lyn, she has +5 speed, she has I think it was some other buff. She gets 30 before Speed Taker. It's insane. Granted, that's also because I've inherited speed +5 on her, but Lyn solves speed issues so well, so quickly, so effectively, that you can't really argue. You can't really argue with it. Speed is so important. The illusory doubles are very useful for eating some hits during a risky enemy phase. They're really good to set up ahead of time and then add some backup attacks if you just can't quite guarantee the kill. Alacrity is very good, especially if you have a double crit build, at critting twice before your opponent can counterattack. Especially good against some bosses. Double crit, crit twice, kill the life bar, they can't counterattack. Next unit. Astro Storm, being such high range, is super versatile. Even if it can't always get a kill, even if you can't guarantee major damage, just the ability to poke for a little bit extra damage oftentimes is enough to make a huge difference. Not even including the fact that it aggroes enemies, not even including any of that. It's just so good. Lyn, combat-wise, is probably the only pure combat emblem that is truly S tier. And this is going to be interesting because I've been trying to whittle down my S tiers in-game, in tier lists, to try and provide a true S tier of this one is better than the rest. I don't know if I can do that with this tier list, because there are 3 emblems that are truly deserving, at least 3 emblems that are truly deserving of S tier. And Lyn's just the second. I genuinely think Lucina is A tier when equipped. Um, Easy way to use Lucina, give her to a non-backup unit, that unit is now a backup unit. Little bit different way of using Lucina. Bonded Shield is insanely good. Bonded Shield is a chain guard that doesn't wear off after the first hit, that doesn't like hurt you, and that depending on who you use can be 100% effective. It'll only work on the first time a unit would have gotten hit in a combat, so if they're getting doubled and they get hit by both doubles, it won't block both hits. But if they're getting doubled and they dodge one of the hits, it'll block the other hit. If they're not getting doubled, it'll block the hit. The person using Bonded Shield does gain experience, even if the enemy has Void Curse, like I showed in a little video clip. There's a lot that you can do just with Bonded Shield. That's not to mention all her sync skills, like dual support, which increases your avoid by up to 90 based on your support levels. Dual assist and dual assist plus, which allows you to use chain attacks when you're far away. And because you're equipping with Lucina, this can happen on any unit, not just a backup. So you can give it to like a mage and have, 3 range with thunder. 3 range backups with thunder. You can give it to an archer and have 3 range backups with a longbow. You can give it to a flying unit and have flying chain attacks. You can do so much with Lucina specifically through just those chain attacks. And it's really incredible just how often you're like 3 or 4 points short of killing an enemy, such that one extra chain attack makes the difference. And Lucina can do that. Lucina can do Bonded Shield. In terms of support, she's a great emblem. In terms of offense, not that great. I think she gives, what is it? It's like skill, speed, and luck as her. I think she's another skill, speed, and luck as her equip bonuses, stat bonuses. I don't remember for sure. They're pretty minor. They're not super impactful. The Noble Rapier is just a rapier. It doesn't have extra damage like it did in Awakening. The Parthia is very good because it doubles experience gain, kind of like Marth's Mercurius. That makes people think, oh, well, she's like a second Marth. You can't use her like a second Marth. She is not an effective combat buff. However, Parthia is quite good for extra experience. And then the Parallel Falchion is a meme because there's no dragons. You fight so few dragons, there's only fell dragons, and it's not effective against fell dragons, even though it was literally created in order to kill the fell dragon Grima. It's not effective against fell dragons. Parallel Falchion is just a meme. I hate it. This is also not talking about her emblem attack, All for One. We don't need to talk about All for One. It's not that good. Okay, All for One is only good for massive death ball strategies where you have everyone around you, and then you make one big attack, and everyone around you within 2 or 3 spaces, depending on what type of unit it is, does a chain attack. Still base accuracy, 80% accuracy chain attack. If they're a hero and have Brave Assist, they can chain attack. If it's a Lin double, it can join in with chain attack. Every unit, even if they're not a backup, can chain attack. You can do a lot with this, but it's a lot more random, and it's only one hit, and it's pretty limited and pretty weak. What I do with All for One, what I use All for One for, is to have a guaranteed hit to chip down an enemy so that someone else can kill. That's how I use All for One. Even though All for One is a meme, I think that all things considered, Lucina, through Bonded Shield and through use of dual assist and chain attack shenanigans, is an A-tier emblem. I think it's funny how it's like Micaiah and Lucina I consider more utility emblems than actually combat effective emblems, yet they are 2 of the best emblems in the game. I'm going to put Ike in A tier as well because his bonuses are so numerically strong. He gives, I think it's strength, defense, and hit points. Maybe it's strength, defense, and build. His emblem weapons are pretty good. His hammer is a very strong smash hammer, which is actually it's not very strong. It's the same might as an iron blade, I think, and either an iron or steel blade. Same might as like a base iron blade or base steel blade, so it's not super strong, but being armor effective, it can still make a difference. Irvon is very high might. It's like a silver axe with +3 resistance, or +3 defense, or 5 defense. And then Ragnell, not Alondite. What did I think Alondite? Ragnell is a 1/2 range sword with really solid might, and plus defense. It's not as good as the Binding Blade from Roy, but it's still quite good. But what you really want from Ike when you're using Ike, when you engage Ike, is all the defense he gives. Through Resolve, through when engaged, especially Lagu's Friend, having all the damage you take, even though it drops your Void to 0, taking half damage is insane. And then Great Ether, increasing your defense further, being a big tank, and then hitting down all enemies and healing back all that damage is real good. It was real solid. Great Ether can be problematic. You can get into some bad situations because if you put it down in terms of... If you put it down somewhere where there's a lot of enemy heroes or enemy chain attacks, you can't kill them, you can't even damage them, and so especially if they're heroes, they'll always have Brave Assist, and then you'll just die to chain attacks, no matter how high your defense is. So, using Ike without having first inherited pair up from Corrin, do at your own risk. Ike, though, turns any unit with decent defense, with decent bulk, into a solid tank. Like Kagetsu at base. Goldmary at base can be a very solid tank just using Ike without any investment, or can turn a bulky tank into a near unkillable tank outside of stuff like chain attacks or even magic. They still get reduced damage because of Lagu's Friend. Because of how powerful tanking is in this game and how Ike enables so many units to be tanks, even into the late game where enemies start scaling their damage quite high, I rank Ike pretty solidly as an A tier emblem because he is that solid pivot. I think that... Actually, do I rank him that high? I'm debating actually bringing him to... I think Ike might just be B tier. I think he's the top of B tier. I think he's better than Roy and Marth, but I don't think he's as good or as impactful as Sigurd or Lucina. Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I want to give him A tier, but I don't think I can justify it. Yeah, Ike is the top of B tier. Ike is like a B plus emblem. He's really good with defenses, decent, bulk, decent strength. He makes anyone bulkier, and he can use that bulk very well, but it doesn't come without downsides, and I think those downsides and the fact that you have to be really careful with how you use him do put him below someone like Sigurd, who just gives so much movement that you can use however you want, or Lucina, who's so versatile in terms of utility and support that she really becomes an all-star. Byleth is definitely the top of A tier, and I'm debating S tier because of Goddess Dance alone. A quad dance is always good. A quad dance is so... Actually, you know what? Yeah. Oh, not DLC tier. He's not DLC tier. Byleth... I really suffer. I really struggle. Actually, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. We're going to be adding a row below. Yeah, I think... and this is going to make more sense in a little bit, why this is kind of the way that I'm stratifying things. I hate bringing everyone down because I'm not saying that these are all somehow worse now. This is just saying this is how I have to stratify things. Because Byleth is insanely good. A Quad Dance is very good. Instruct is very good. All of Byleth's weapons are... Okay, not all of them are amazing, but a lot of them are quite good. I think Amir is probably the worst of the bunch on dragons. No, Blood Gang's probably the worst of the bunch because it's just a magic sword. Then Amir. Because he has different weapons based on what class of unit you put him on. Raphael Gem is a fail gem because it's on Key Adept, and that doesn't really give too much. Ooh, my music ended. Time to turn something else on. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Yeah. Raphael Gem is pretty mediocre. The Aegis Shield might also be the worst. I don't know. He has a lot of ones that are kind of mediocre, but then he has ones like the Thrysis, giving +2 range to all magic attacks, giving you a 1-3 range Surge for guaranteed damage, and a 1-5 range Thunder. You're giving up on like Olwyn or May for Thunder for truly damaging Thunder beams in exchange for a 1-5 range. I can't complain with a 1-5 range. It's only available when he's engaged, but it's still fun. Other than that, Vajra Mushashti, I can't pronounce. Vajra Mushati, however, Vajra Mushti, however you pronounce that. I need to see it in front of me in order to pronounce it. Gauntlets that not only take from both magic and strength, because that's how gauntlets work, but also do extra damage based on the lower of enemies' defense or resistance. They target a resistance. They target one of your enemy's defenses, which is pretty good. Sword of the Creator is a dragon effective 1-2 range sword, surprise dragon effective, but actually matters and actually is quite powerful. Because dragon effectiveness actually does work against wyverns, and that is somewhat meaningful, especially when coming on Byleth's weapon. Instruct is pretty good. It gives a massive stat bonus based on who you are equipped with. If it's a Lear, if it's Dragon type unit, then you get basically a Spectrum Rally of +3. If you have it on a backup unit, then it's a Strength Rally. A mystical unit, then it's a Magic Rally of +4. I think the Speed Rally is like +4 as well, or maybe it's +6. Oh no. Okay. I need to wrap this up. There's a Speed Rally, but the big ones are Luck and Skill are +10, which is really good. That's also not just including the fact that a Quad Dance is always good. And a Quad Dance that's not on your Dancer means that you can dance, Quad Dance, dance again, using the same unit for 4 actions if you have Canter or something. Or some other way of moving units. Also, that's something I forgot to mention, Ike gives reposition, which is one of the best rearranging skills in the game. But why is Byleth A tier, and why did I move all these tiers down, and why am I debating putting a Micaiah down to A tier as well? Well, that's because Corrin breaks the game. Emblem Corrin breaks the game because of... Not because of Dragon Veins. Dragon Veins are insanely powerful at limiting movement. Dragon Veins are insanely good at limiting movement. Draconic Hex is very powerful at nerfing enemies, debuffing them, and allowing you to deal more damage to them and attack them safely. But Corrin's best ability, bar none, is Draconic Gaze. Or, not Draconic Gaze. What the heck is it even called? I forget the name of Corrin's best ability. Why do I forget the name of Corrin's best ability? Dreadful Aura. Dreadful Aura. Target foe and all foes within 1 space of it cannot move for 1 turn after combat. Dreadful Aura is insane. Dreadful Aura is possibly the most game-breaking thing that Corrin can do, because basically it's a guaranteed freeze staff on 5 enemies that you can use with any attack. You can use it with 3-range thunder or longbow. What I've been doing and how I've been cheesing through a lot of these paralogs really early on is to just, I put Corrin on Hortensia, I give Hortensia a Thunder Tome, I fly out into a blob of enemies, hit them with thunder, freeze a number of them, canter away, dance, hit more with thunder, freeze, move them away. And then I've successfully frozen a block of enemies, and I can repeat that every single turn so long as Corrin is still engaged. That's also not even mentioning quality time, which allows whoever's has Corrin equipped to be an effective minor healer. That's also not including pair up, which allows whoever's Corrin engaged with to ignore chain attacks. That's not including any of that, because that's all bonus, and that's all inheritable. But Dreadful Aura by itself, if that's not good enough for you, Torrential Roar hits 3 enemies in a line, applies water, and applies Draconic Hex and Dreadful Aura to all those enemies, so you effectively freeze up to 10 enemies immediately with a single cast of Torrential Roar. Dreadful Aura enables so much, and it feels weird for me to say that one ability is worth a tier above all of these other units, all emblems with all of these other broken skills, but I'm gonna say it. I think Corrin is the most game-breaking emblem in the game, maybe even above Tiki Star Sphere. That's how broken I feel Dreadful Aura is, and how impactful it is. And I hate that it's on Corrin of all units. Corrin's stat boosts are hit points, magic, and resistance. A lot of hit points, actually, so she'll make whoever she's on a lot more survivable from everything. Give them some extra magic and some extra resistance. Her emblem weapons suck. It's a dual katana, the Wakizashi and the Yato. None of them are really impactful. Corrin's good, though. Corrin, just because of Dreadful Aura alone, like, just say that she only has Dreadful Aura and nothing else, and Corrin's still, like, at least A tier, if not S tier. And then that leaves Erica, who I think has to be down in C tier with the other combat-only emblems. She's really good against monsters, really good against dragons. Twin Strike is pretty effective. She has some other weird niche things she can do with like the Wind Sword, but really what you're using her for is her effectiveness against monsters. The Sieglind is a very powerful corrupted effective weapon. Twin Strike is a great way of dealing with dragons, or at least dealing with health bars off dragons, dealing massive amounts of chip to them so you can finish them off with another unit, so you can save yourself from getting burned alive, potentially. She's just kind of generally pretty good, pretty solid. Never super impressive, so maybe she's like D tier, because she only really cares about corrupted. But still solid. No real complaints, just not really that flashy. You do have some fun stuff that you can do with Lunar Brace, and with the Gentility is nice. And then the swap is nice, but I don't feel like it's ever super impactful. Because, hey, you can deal a little bit more damage and heal instead of dealing more damage through cutting defense and taking less damage. And it's just like, okay, you swap to heal and then you swap back, but I've never really swapped, because when you swap to heal, you're also taking more damage, so unless you have a really specific plan with it, you're rarely doing better by swapping to heal. You're almost always better off by not swapping. Yeah. And we're back again to fix this list. One sec. So I made a few rushed moves, talked with a little bit of people in my community, just to figure out a little bit more of what I should do, and the general consensus was, 1, I need to clarify what these tiers are, because people were really thrown off by just like A, B, C, and 2, Erica is apparently really good. So I would still put her in C tier, because C tier is combat utility. All these emblems, they just make combat better in their own different ways. And I'd say that that's all viable, that's all well and good, but that kind of is what they do. There are people who are like, oh yeah, Erica should be A tier. The more I use her, the more I'm like really happy to use her. The more that, you know, Sieglinde works, the more units you inherit Lunar Brace onto them. And it's just like, I get it. I get it. I get it. I understand your point. To me, she's a one-jobber. She has Sieglinde. She has a pretty good emblem attack in Twin Strike. And then Lunar Brace allows for some fun strategies, because it combos off well and with like multiple hits and with other things like Luna. She's a one-jobber to me. She does the combat utility thing. I argue that units like Roy, that emblems like Roy, are better because they're more generally useful on both offense and defense, whereas Erica is pretty specifically only good on offense for the most part. Even the switch to Ephraim is like, I never use it. I don't really see its usefulness being that great. And I would argue that Marth's early game utility trumps her late game utility, but at the same time, they're all within the same tier. And again, C tier is not bad. C tier is very good. All of these emblems are very good. Bottom line, don't forget, at the start of the video, I said all of these emblems, maybe except for Leaf, are very good and you should use all of them. Okay. Celica, again, doesn't do much other than Warp Ragnarok. You're probably better off with a magic-based bond ring than Celica. Leaf, he's Leaf. B tier. I'm trying to come up with a word that... A tier. Absolutely phenomenal and game breaking. Borderline overpowered. Borderline overpowered, great utility. Lucina's probably the top of this, and Ike's probably the bottom. Debating actually putting Ike down in C tier, but then I don't know. I don't really know. Yeah, I'm gonna put Ike down in C tier. Time for all the hot takes to come out. No, maybe Ike is like borderline combat utility, and I don't know. At this point, do I just put everyone here in C tier, and then at this point, do I just put everyone in B tier? This is the problem with tiering these emblems, because what they do is so different and so distinct and so unique and so good and so powerful. And it's like, yes, because of your playstyle, your results may differ. I honestly feel maybe Lyn is not as good as Byleth or Micaiah, and so maybe Lyn is down here. But Lyn is also so freaking good. Maybe Lucina is higher. I don't know. Lucina is so freaking good. Lyn fixes speed. Lyn fixes a unit and makes them good. Lyn fixes a mid-speed unit and turns them amazing. And so I can't say that's bad. But do I think that Lyn is as broken or overpowered as a quad dance, or as healing everyone and giving staff utility to anyone? I don't know. I honestly don't know. This is the biggest struggle. And so it's like, I think that with this is what I have to settle on. Which means that this is probably what it ends up being. But then C tier is way too bloated. So then we have to do stuff like this, and then that kind of just feels wrong. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Till next time, this is Mythril Zenith, signing out.